It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Mary Yerina.
And this is It's Movie Time. And if people were able to see our video of this, they would see that I have my ascot.
Very distinguished.
Yes, ready for our 18th century film here called Chevalier. Very snooty of us, I think.
Well, I don't know about that, but this is, I think, a film whose story has been long overdue. We focus on the life of Joseph Boulogne, who was considered the Black Mozart of his time in late 1700s France.
And you're reminding me that this is a docudrama, and you cannot expect absolute perfection in the historicity of this story.
No, it's certainly compressed because this man's life was so astonishing and for a long time lost to history. So I'm grateful that it's being brought forward in a theatrical release of this film because I think more people will become aware of his story and his music, of which his music is only a very small part.
Well, you know, it's the kind of film that I have to think that maybe even your husband, Bob, might go to see because of isn't he chair of the board or something at ProMusica?
He is.
And you got this guy
But he did not go see this film with me.
Oh, Bob. All right, okay. Anyway, you, because of course you are also instrumental in ProMusica.
No pun intended.
Would have to love this. Mary, the reason that we don't have that much, of course, is that Napoleon was a bad boy. And he banned anything about the Black Mozart, so they destroyed his music. And
yeah, when Bonaparte came to power after the French Revolution, he wanted to reinstitute slavery.
Yes,
and
yes.
As a result of his worldview in terms of race and wanting to eliminate, basically he wanted to eliminate any outstanding cultural references or achievements of the Black community in France, and so Joseph Boulogne's music was banned from being played, and a lot of his works were destroyed. Fortunately for us, they're being rediscovered because once music's been published, you always hope that there's that one score that didn't get destroyed. And in this case, and in fact in the film, we hear, I think, roughly 7 of Joseph Boulogne's compositions, and he only composed for about 8 or 9 years.
Well, what a man. I mean, talk about a Renaissance man.
Oh, completely. He rose to fame in France as an expert swordsman.
Yes.
And only later was it discovered that he was also a prodigy with regards to the violin, although the film emphasizes his prowess with the violin before the sword. So there's, it's just amazing, like everything the man did in his life, he excelled at. And we only see really the swordsmanship and the violin, and this story focuses on his musical career. And in the starring role as Joseph Boulogne, Chevalier de Saint-Georges, is Calvin Harrison Jr., who ironically you and I first really discovered in the film Loose that we reviewed in 2019.
Gosh.
He's since gone on to be nominated for awards in parts of award-winning films, including Baz Luhrmann's Elvis, where he played B.B. King.
Yes, he did.
And also the Trial of the Chicago 7.
Okay.
Am I getting that right?
Yep.
From a couple years ago. So he's really been forging a career for himself at the age of 28, now playing Chevalier.
So if you see a rendition of the Chevalier, you can see that he's impossibly handsome as well. I mean, come on, how much more can you be given in life? and quite a heartthrob for the ladies at court. And so you have Harrison Jr. just filling that role just beautifully, so to speak.
Physically, he certainly is able to carry that role.
Yes.
And I also think he and the filmmakers, this is directed by Steve Williams and written by Stephanie Robinson, who both come from TV backgrounds. But they're able to, I think, accurately portray probably how Joseph had to conduct his life. He was in the French court, which most royalty courts were full of intrigue and politics and deceit, and to the point of murdering your rivals. And the French court in particular was probably even more notorious than any other court.
Sure, because of Marie Antoinette. I mean, and she was buds with him.
She was, and she, in fact, in real life, when he did not become director of the Paris Opera,
Ooh.
he actually ended up performing in private concerts at her at her venue on the Versailles.
It seemed
estate.
almost impossible that she couldn't award him that, and yet the racism business was just dominant. There's no way you could beat that. I mean, and he devised a face-off with another composer.
With a candidate, which is actually not true.
Well,
Not that
I don't
can
doubt
find.
that. And I would have to say, do you think he really had a violin face-off with Mozart?
That is actually
I know they were friends.
They actually were under the same roof. They lived together for a period of time in Paris.
So you think there really was?
But according to my friend Elizabeth, who saw the film with me, and she was able to find this through her research, I did not. That actually was true. They did have a face-off on
Mary,
stage.
in that film, they cannot replicate, they can't do better than that opening scene. That is one of the best opening scenes in film history.
It certainly sets the stage,
Oh my
no pun
Lord.
intended,
Yeah.
for not only how virtuosic and accomplished Joseph Boulogne was,
Yeah.
but that he rivaled the top echelons of his profession at that time, and it creates even more the stark contrast that if you say Mozart today, people know who you're talking about.
Right.
If you say Boulogne or Chevalier DeSando,
Right.
nobody knows
Yeah.
who you're talking about. So I think it was really brave of them to make this film and bring this story to light. And I think his story, fast forward to where we are today, there's still those elements of racism and even sexism and other aspects in that society that they bring forward and are relevant in today's society. And I thought they did it in a very
Oh, I did too.
good way.
You can't deny the relevance to today and the difficulty that anybody who was black and who was super talented as he was would still have something of a difficulty, but not anywhere near it. Now, we didn't mention, and I'd like to mention, besides their setting up, I think, an impossible opening scene that you can't follow it with. I was just so moved by that competition between him and Mozart that everything else seemed just a little bit of a disappointment because you can't. Well, and maybe
It's very bold.
Oh, Mary,
Very
yes,
bold.
you are so right. Is his affair with Marie Josephine, played by very coolly by Samara Weaving. Yeah,
And that is actually true. They did have an affair, they did have a child,
she was married.
and she was married
Yeah.
to a marquis,
Yeah.
an older, much older than she was.
Martin Chokas. Whoa, very good.
Very good. Although, I was looking at him and he was reminding me of somebody by the end of the
Russell
film.
Crowe.
No, he did not remind me of Russell
Oh,
Crowe.
all right.
He reminded me in his face of Kevin Spacey. He was like
Oh, yeah,
11-year
okay,
older
I can get that.
Kevin Spacey.
Oh yeah, I kept seeing Crowe, but this guy was really, he's head of the military too for Marie Antoinette.
He's
which
part
is,
of- yeah,
you
he's part
messing
of
around
his
with
work.
his wife.
Yeah.
This is not a smart thing.
Well, again, it's reflective, accurately, I think, of the hedonism of the French court.
Yeah.
It was so excessive under Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, and it was at a time where people were rising up to want liberty and equality in society. So I think they also show Joseph becoming a part of that movement. And it's interesting because he was able to navigate, because of his talents, becoming a Chevalier, becoming a member of the court, as his father did. One thing that's inaccurate in the film is that his father did not abandon him to a school,
yeah.
a Jesuit school in France. His father, with his mother, actually moved with him to France.
Yes.
And the father gave him his last name, which was highly unusual,
Yes.
of a white plantation owner and a black slave. So that was a little bit inaccurate, but he, in his success, lived in the court. He was given an apartment, luxurious clothes. I mean, he was given all the trappings of the time and what you would expect from somebody who was part of the French court. But even then, despite all of it, he was only allowed to go so far.
Well, Mary Yerina, then we will go farther. If people will go to our podcast, they have to go to WCBE.org, get the podcast experience, and then back talk. And so they can hear more about this darkly historic figure. I find it fascinating just listening to you. That's what I have to hear.
Well, at the very least, I hope people seek out the film in theaters, because his story, even though this is compressed to an hour and 47 minutes, and doesn't address all of his talents, his story and his music deserve to be heard.